For years, I blamed age. The aching knees, the sudden fatigue, the foggy memory, the heavy legs, all of it. Doctors said it was just part of getting older. But something felt off. I was only 73, but I moved like I was 90. My energy was gone. My motivation? Non-existent. It wasn't until a quiet conversation with a friend and a single dietary change that everything began to reverse. The culprit? It wasn't time. It was something I was putting into my body every single day. Part 1, the day I realized something was wrong. It started with small things. I couldn't lift my grocery bags without pausing. My joints cracked when I bent to tie my shoes. Worse than anything, I no longer looked forward to anything. Not morning walks. Not chatting on the phone. Not even reading, which used to be my escape. I felt like I had aged 2 decades overnight. I remember the moment that brought it all into focus. It was my grandson's school recital. I stood to applaud and felt lightheaded. My knees trembled under me. I had to sit back down. My daughter looked at me, concerned. "Are you okay, Mom?" That question stayed with me for days. Was I okay? Why did I feel so much older than I was? Part 2, the search for answers, and the disappointment that followed. I visited 2 doctors over the next few months. Blood work, checkups, prescriptions. The results? Everything looks normal for your age. Maybe you need to rest more. Try a multivitamin and reduce stress. That was it. No answers. No plan. No improvement. So I tried it all. More sleep. Magnesium supplements. Walking daily. But nothing changed. I still woke up stiff, tired, bloated, and foggy. I even started forgetting little things, why I walked into a room, names of neighbors I've known for years. It wasn't aging. It was something else. Something my body was trying to tell me, but I wasn't listening the right way. Part 3, the turning point came over coffee. It wasn't a doctor or a book that led to the answer. It was a friend, over a casual conversation at a quiet cafe. "You know," she said, "I felt just like you 6 months ago." And I cut out just one thing, and everything shifted. I raised my eyebrows. "What did you cut out?" She leaned in and whispered. "Sugar. Not just candy or soda. But hidden sugar, in sauces, yogurts, bread, crackers, salad dressings. Even in foods labeled healthy." She showed me an app that scanned food labels. We checked the sugar content of the cafe's oat milk. 14 grams in 1 cup. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't eating too much food. I was eating too much confusion. Things I thought were good for me were draining the life out of me. That night, I went home and opened my pantry with new eyes. Part 4, the Great Pantry Purge. I stood in front of my kitchen shelves with a marker in one hand and a trash bag in the other. It felt silly at first. I wasn't preparing for a diet. I wasn't trying to lose weight. I just wanted my life back. I started scanning every item. Cereal? 9 grams of sugar per serving, and I usually had 2. Granola bars? 11 grams. Tomato sauce? 8 grams and half a cup. My so-called healthy fruit yogurt? 17 grams. Even the whole wheat bread had sugar listed third on the ingredient label. I had no idea I was consuming 60 to 80 grams of sugar a day, sometimes more. And this wasn't candy or dessert. It was my everyday food. I tossed most of it. I kept oats, eggs, olive oil, nuts, greens, and a few frozen berries. And I promised myself I'd give this sugar-free experiment a real shot, at least 2 weeks. Part 5, the first week was brutal. They don't tell you that removing sugar is a withdrawal process. For the first 3 days, I had headaches. Not unbearable, but persistent. A kind of dull, thumping reminder that my body was adjusting. By day 4, I felt irritable. The cravings were intense, not just for sweet food, but for comfort. I missed my rituals. My morning toast with jam. The midday cookie with tea. Even the flavored yogurt before bed. But I reminded myself, this wasn't forever. It was a test. A chance to prove whether sugar was the silent thief behind my fatigue and fog. So I drank more water. I added cinnamon to my coffee for flavor. I snacked on walnuts when cravings struck. And I started going to bed earlier, since evenings were the hardest. By day 7, something shifted. I woke up with more clarity. Not energy, not yet, but clarity. The fog had lifted just enough for me to notice its absence. It was the first hopeful sign in months. Part 6. By week 2, my body started talking back. It was subtle, but undeniable. I stood up from bed without groaning. My knees, which always creaked and ached during my morning routine, felt looser. My stomach, often bloated and tight by noon, felt calm. I wasn't hungry all the time either, and when I did eat, I actually tasted my food more. I began journaling the changes. Day 9, woke up before the alarm. No headache. Day 11, walked 25 minutes without needing to rest. Day 13, realized I haven't napped all week. Emotionally, I felt lighter. I wasn't swinging from tired to anxious to sluggish anymore. There was a steadiness, like my body was finding its natural rhythm again. And I hadn't taken a single supplement, pill, or powder. Just one change. One hard change, yes. But one that was clearly restoring me in ways I never expected. Part 7, what happened at day 30 shocked me. I didn't mark the calendar. There was no countdown or celebration planned. But on the 30th morning without added sugar, I noticed something so ordinary, it felt extraordinary. I stood up, without pain. No stiffness. No knee cracking. No breath holding. Just movement. It had been so long since that had happened that I genuinely paused mid-step. Was this a fluke? By noon, I had walked to the market, cleaned the kitchen, and even trimmed a few plants outside. All without needing to sit down or rest. More than the physical ease, there was a mental clarity I hadn't felt in years. I didn't lose my train of thought mid-conversation. I remembered to return calls. I finished a book in 2 sittings. And for the first time in over a year, I didn't cancel plans. I wanted to see people. Because I didn't feel like I had to fake energy anymore, I had energy. Part 8, the doctor's visit, and the numbers that didn't lie. At the end of the month, I returned to my doctor. Not because I was sick, but because I was curious. I asked for new labs. Blood sugar. Inflammation markers. Lipid profile. He looked at me, a little surprised. "You've got color in your face," he said. "You look different." When the results came in, he was even more surprised than I was. My fasting glucose dropped 12 points. CRP, a marker of inflammation, was lower than it had been in years. My HDL cholesterol had improved. My weight had dropped 5 pounds, not from dieting, just from removing sugar. He looked at the screen, then back at me. "What changed?" he asked. I smiled. "I stopped eating sugar," I said. He raised his eyebrows. "Just sugar?" "Just sugar," I repeated. And everything else followed. Part 9, Sugar and Joint Pain, the link I never knew. In the weeks that followed, I began reading everything I could about sugar. I had lived through the experience. Now I wanted the science to match the story. Here's what I learned. Sugar triggers inflammation, especially refined sugars and high-fructose corn syrup. Chronic inflammation shows up in joints, blood vessels, the gut, even the brain. Studies link excess sugar intake to arthritis flare-ups, mood swings, and increased fatigue. Sugar also causes a spike crash cycle in blood sugar, which drains energy and clouds focus. Suddenly, all my symptoms made sense. The achy joints after breakfast? Cereal plus toast plus jelly. The mid-morning crash? Sugar from my healthy granola bar. The swelling in my hands by evening? The sugary sauce I used at lunch. It was never aging. It was inflammation, fed by sugar. And once I cut it out, my body began to heal. Not instantly. Not perfectly. But deeply. Part 10. How I learned to eat all over again. Removing sugar wasn't just about skipping desserts. It meant relearning how to live in the real world, where sugar hides behind every label, every low-fat sticker, and every celebratory meal. I started simple. Breakfasts became savory, eggs with spinach, avocado on rye bread, or chia pudding with cinnamon and walnuts. Lunches were built on real ingredients: grilled chicken, quinoa, leafy greens, roasted vegetables. Dinners became my calm space: lentil soup, salmon with garlic lemon dressing, or sautéed mushrooms over brown rice. And for snacks? Raw almonds. A few slices of cucumber with sea salt. Herbal tea with a touch of fresh ginger or mint. I didn't restrict calories. I didn't count anything. I just read ingredients and trusted my body to tell me when it was full. And it did. Better than it had in years. The best part? Food began to taste better. Without sugar dulling my taste buds, I could suddenly savor the earthiness of roasted carrots, the slight sweetness of a ripe tomato, the creaminess of tahini. Food became a celebration, not an addiction. Part 11. The mental shift that changed everything. There's something most people don't talk about when you remove sugar. The clarity. The emotional stability. The ability to respond, not react. Before, I was ruled by spikes and crashes. I'd be joyful after a sweet snack, only to crash into irritability or fatigue an hour later. It was like riding an emotional roller coaster with no seatbelt. But now? My mind felt quiet. I didn't jump at every loud sound. I didn't panic over small tasks. I didn't forget names or lose track of my thoughts mid-sentence. It was as if the fog that had settled over my brain for years had lifted. I began enjoying reading again. I could follow complex conversations. I even began writing in my journal every morning, something I hadn't done since my 50s. And the best part? People around me noticed. "You sound so clear-headed," my daughter said. "You're glowing," a friend told me over lunch. And for once, I believed them. Part 12. Social life without sweets. Can you really do it? You'd be surprised how often food is tied to identity. Birthdays, holidays, even casual dinners with friends, sugar is everywhere. At first, I dreaded these events. Would I look rude if I refused cake? Would people think I was being difficult? But something beautiful happened. When I politely declined, no one scoffed. In fact, many leaned in and asked, "Really? Why did you stop?" And when I told them my story, the fatigue, the inflammation, the reversal, most of them listened. Not all changed, but many became curious. Some even tried it themselves. A few weeks later, one friend texted, "3 days without sugar. I already feel lighter." Socially, I didn't lose anything. I gained confidence. I showed up more fully, because I wasn't hiding behind discomfort or fog or forced smiles. And when I did indulge, a bite of dark chocolate, a taste of homemade pie, it was intentional, slow, and truly enjoyable. It was no longer a crutch. It was a choice. Part 13. I thought poor sleep was normal. I was wrong. Before I removed sugar, my nights were restless. I'd fall asleep for an hour or two, only to wake up with racing thoughts or a bloated stomach. I'd toss and turn, trying to find a comfortable position for my aching hips. Some nights, I'd give up entirely and sit in the living room chair until dawn, wondering if this was just what aging felt like. But within 4 weeks of cutting sugar, something remarkable happened. I began sleeping through the night. It wasn't instant, but it was undeniable. I fell asleep faster. I stayed asleep longer. And I woke up refreshed, not groggy, not stiff, but ready. Later, I read that sugar disrupts the body's melatonin cycle, especially when consumed close to bedtime. It spikes cortisol, the stress hormone, making deep rest nearly impossible. Now, my evenings are calm. A warm herbal tea. A gentle walk. And by 10 p.m., my body naturally signals it's time for rest. It's the kind of peace I hadn't known for decades. Part 14, Intimacy, Confidence, and Connection, a surprising bonus. This part is a bit personal, but it matters. I had stopped thinking about intimacy. Not just the physical kind, but emotional closeness, too. When you feel drained, bloated, achy, or foggy, you tend to retreat. It's easier to withdraw than to engage. Easier to sit alone than to talk. Easier to say I'm just tired than to admit you feel disconnected. But as the sugar cleared from my body, so did the walls I had built around myself. I became more talkative. More present. More me. And that sparked a new chapter in my relationship. My husband and I began taking walks together again. We shared real conversations, not just updates. We laughed more. Even intimacy returned, not forced or awkward, but natural. Confidence is powerful. When you feel well, you show up. And that presence draws people in, family, friends, partners. I didn't just get my body back. I got my relationships back, too. Part 15, I walk differently now, and it's not just my legs. Before this journey, I walked hunched, cautious, often checking where I placed each foot. My knees burned. My ankles swelled. Some days, I needed to hold onto furniture to stay balanced. Now, I walk tall. My posture has improved. My pace is steady. My steps are confident. But more importantly, I walk through life differently. I no longer assume every ache is aging. I don't ignore my body's whispers until they become screams. And I've learned that healing isn't about doing everything, it's about changing the one thing that changes everything else. For me, that was sugar. Removing it didn't just ease pain or clear my head. It gave me back a sense of agency, that I could change, I could heal, and I could age on my own terms. Part 16, it was never just about sugar. When I began this journey, I thought I was just giving up a sweetener. But what I've come to understand is that sugar was a symptom, not just of my diet, but of my lifestyle. It represented convenience, comfort, distraction. It was my coping tool for stress, for boredom, for sadness, even for loneliness. Removing sugar forced me to confront deeper habits. How often I used food to avoid feelings. How I numbed my exhaustion instead of resting. How I accepted decline as destiny instead of asking, what if this can change? This journey became far bigger than a pantry cleanup. It became a mirror, showing me how I'd slowly handed over my health to habit. But also showing me how easily I could take it back. Part 17, Aging isn't the enemy, neglect is. One of the greatest lies we're told is that aging must come with pain, fatigue, forgetfulness, and decline. That you reach a certain number, 60, 70, 80, and things just start to fall apart. But I've learned that it's not age. It's inflammation. It's toxicity. It's nutrient depletion. And more often than not, it's neglect, not because we don't care, but because we've been misled. We've been sold the idea that solutions come in pills. That low fat and low calorie mean healthy. That breakfast should be cereal and juice. That tiredness is normal and stiffness is inevitable. But when you remove the poison, even one as normalized as sugar, the body remembers how to heal. And aging becomes something entirely different. Not a slow erosion, but a graceful transformation. Part 18, my message to anyone who feels like I did. If you're tired all the time. If your joints hurt. If your brain feels cloudy, your stomach is bloated, your sleep is broken. And if everyone keeps telling you it's just your age. I want to tell you. It might not be. It might be something you're eating every day without realizing its impact. It might be something so common, you've never questioned it. And it might be the one thing silently stealing years of your life. You don't need a complicated plan. You don't need to give up everything. You just need to start with one choice. For me, it was cutting sugar. For you, it might be that, or something else entirely. But please, don't wait for another year to pass in pain or fog or disconnection. You are not broken. Your body is waiting for you to listen. And sometimes, listening starts with letting go of the one thing you never thought to question.